In the rugged heart of Appalachia, there are stories etched deep into the land. They are tales of hard work, of family, and of a quiet courage that few will ever know. The hills of West Virginia hold these stories close. They are whispered on the wind that rustles through the ancient trees. For generations, the people here have gone down into the darkness. They have ventured into the earth itself to bring back the fuel that powered a nation. This is a story about one of those places, a place called the Sago Mine. It is a story of a single day that would change everything. A day that would test the limits of hope and the strength of the human spirit. The Sago Mine lies in Upshur County, West Virginia. It is an underground coal mine, a sprawling network of tunnels burrowed deep beneath the rolling hills. Like so many mines in the region, it was the lifeblood of the community. It provided jobs, it supported families, it was a source of pride, a difficult but honest way to make a living. The mine was operated by the International Coal Group, or ICG. They were a company that knew the business of coal, they knew the risks, and they knew the rewards. But on a cold January 2nd, 2006, the inherent dangers of this work would make themselves known in the most devastating way imaginable. To understand what happened at Sago, you must first understand the world of the coal miner. It is a world apart. You leave the sunlight behind, you descend into a place of constant darkness, a place where the air you breathe is carefully managed by powerful fans. The walls around you are solid rock and coal, holding back the immense weight of the mountain above. The work is physically demanding, a constant battle against the elements and the earth. Every day is a calculated risk. Miners learn to trust their training, their equipment, and most of all, the men working alongside them in the deep. For the men who worked the Sago Mine, this was their reality. They were fathers, sons, husbands. They were neighbors, friends. They knew the mine's every twist and turn, its familiar sounds and silences. They understood the language of the mountain, the creaks and groans that signaled its immense power. They were professionals, highly skilled in their craft. They faced the darkness daily so that the world above could have light and warmth. But the mountain is unforgiving. It keeps its own secrets. And on January 2nd, 2006, one of those secrets would be unleashed with terrifying force, plunging the community and the nation into a desperate vigil. The year was 2006. The day was January 2nd. A bitter cold had settled over West Virginia. The holiday season was just ending. A time of warmth, family gatherings. But for the miners scheduled for the morning shift at Sago, the day began like any other. They woke before the sun, pulling on layers of work clothes to guard against the winter chill. The world outside was still and quiet, cloaked in the pre-dawn darkness. The air was crisp and cold. It was a Monday, the start of a new work week. As the first shift of miners arrived, the Sago Mine complex was a small island of light and activity. Headlamps cut through the darkness as men gathered, sharing a cup of coffee, a few words before their descent. The temperature hovered near freezing. The ground was hard, and the breath of the miners plumed in the cold air. There was nothing to suggest this day would be different, nothing to warn them of the catastrophe that was brewing deep within the earth. It was simply a cold winter morning, a day for hard work in the heart of coal country. Around 50 to 60 men typically worked each shift at the Sago Mine. They would travel deep underground, some more than 2 miles from the entrance. Their world was a labyrinth of man-made caverns and tunnels, supported by timber, steel. This particular morning, the first shift was preparing to relieve the night crew and begin their day's work. They were a team. They relied on each other for their safety and their lives. The bond between miners is forged in the shared experience of working in one of the world's most dangerous environments. The time was approaching 6:30 a.m. The sun had not yet risen over the Appalachian peaks. Deep inside the Sago Mine, 13 men were working in the second left section of the mine. They were far from the surface, deep within the mountain's embrace, preparing the equipment, checking their gear, getting ready to extract the coal. Above ground, the world was slowly waking up. But below, in the silent black corridors of the mine, a hidden danger was gathering, A volatile mixture of methane gas, a constant and deadly threat in coal mining, was reaching a critical point. The 13 men trapped in the darkness were not just numbers. They were individuals, each with a life, a family, and a story. They spanned decades, 20s to 60s, youthful grit beside seasoned wisdom. Some were seasoned veterans with decades of experience underground. Others were younger, following in the footsteps of their fathers and their grandfathers. They were men like Terry Helms, a foreman known for his steady hand and experience. They were men like Marty Bennett, a father who coached his son's Little League team. They were the heart and soul of their small West Virginia communities. Among them were friends and relatives who worked side by side. Deep within the earth, in places untouched by sunlight for millions of years, the process of forming coal also creates methane. This colorless, odorless gas is a miner's constant, invisible enemy. It seeps from the coal seams and surrounding rock, slowly filling any unventilated space. At the Sago Mine, a section of the mine had been sealed off in 2005. It was an area that was no longer being actively mined. The standard procedure is to erect substantial seals, concrete walls designed to isolate these abandoned areas and contain the hazardous gases that inevitably accumulate within them. Behind these walls, the methane concentration can build to dangerously explosive levels, waiting silently for a way to escape. The exact cause of the ignition, the spark that lit the fuse at Sago, remains a subject of debate among investigators. But in the volatile environment of a coal mine, potential ignition sources are everywhere. It could have been an electrical arc from a piece of mining equipment. It could have been the friction of metal against rock, creating a shower of sparks. It could have been static electricity. The Mine Safety and Health Administration, or MSHA, later concluded that the most likely culprit was a lightning strike. The powerful electrical charge from the storm raging on the surface could have traveled through the ground, following the rock strata until it found a path to ignite the waiting methane cloud. At approximately 6:26 a.m., the invisible cloud of methane gas found its ignition source. The result was instantaneous and cataclysmic. In less than a second, the gas mixture exploded. The energy released was immense, a violent, uncontrolled detonation that ripped through the confined space of the mine tunnels. For the 13 men working deeper in the mine, the first sign of trouble was not a sound, but a feeling. A sudden, violent change in air pressure, a concussion that slammed into them with the force of a physical blow. The lights, powered by the mine's electrical grid, would have flickered and died, plunging them into absolute terrifying blackness. Their world, which seconds before had been one of familiar routine and industrial noise, was instantly transformed into a chaotic, disorienting hell. The explosion had happened, the mountain had spoken with a voice of pure violence, and the fight for their lives had just begun. Immediately following the pressure wave came the fire. The explosion's heat created a rolling fireball surging through the tunnels, consuming methane and oxygen in its path. This inferno incinerated everything it touched. Rubber conveyor belts ignited, hydraulic fluid ignited, the coal itself ignited, adding more fuel and creating thick, toxic smoke. The explosion pulverized coal in the ribs and pillars, kicking up an enormous amount of fine black dust. Coal dust is highly flammable. The initial methane blast aerosolized it, creating a secondary fuel source. As the fireball passed, it was followed by a thick, impenetrable cloud of smoke and dust. It was a toxic cocktail. Burning coal, plastics, and rubber released a deadly mixture of gases, chief among them carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide, odorless, colorless, and lethal. It binds to hemoglobin 200 times more effectively than oxygen. Even a small concentration can quickly lead to asphyxiation. The miners were now breathing this poisoned atmosphere. The dust and smoke created a condition of zero visibility. Even powerful cap lamps could not penetrate the thick black soup. The miners were rendered blind, unable to see their own hands in front of their faces. In the violent chaos of the explosion, the mine's lifelines to the outside world were severed. The primary mode of communication in a mine is the hardwired phone system, known as the mine phone. The force of the blast and the subsequent fire destroyed the cables that connected these phones. The line went dead, replaced by an unnerving and absolute silence. Above ground, The crew in the mine office would have seen the power to the mine's ventilation fans and electrical systems suddenly trip. These are immediate, unmistakable signs of a major disaster. Their first instinct, ingrained through years of safety drills, would have been to activate their self-contained self-rescuers. This is a device every miner carries on their belt. It's a small canister that, when activated, provides about 1 hour of breathable oxygen by chemically scrubbing the carbon monoxide from the user's exhaled breath. The device does not supply oxygen from a tank. It uses potassium superoxide to scrub exhaled air, removing carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, and in the process chemically produces oxygen. The reaction generates significant heat, making the canister hot to the touch. The air it provides is warm and dry, a strange comfort in the sudden, terrifying cold of the powerless mine. With the precious 1 hour clock of their rescuers ticking, they had to make a decision. Their training presented them with 2 primary options: escape or barricade. But the path back to the surface was now a landscape of destruction, blocked by debris, with fire and with deadly concentrations of toxic gas. The second option, barricade. Find a defensible spot and seal it off from contaminated air to make a makeshift airlock. The goal, a sealed chamber with clean air to sustain them until rescuers arrived. Ultimately, 13 men, led by experienced leaders, made the hard choice. The path out was too dangerous, too unknown. They would make their stand. Having made the decision to barricade, the next critical task was to find a suitable location. They needed a place that was structurally sound, away from the immediate path of the explosion's force. Debris littered their path, turning familiar tunnels into a hazardous obstacle course. The miners, relying on their intimate mental map of the second left section, began to move deeper into the mine, away from the explosion's source. It was their best hope of finding a place where the air might be cleaner. Their search led them approximately 260 feet from their working face to a location designated as the #1 entry. Here, they found what they were looking for. The men began their work with a desperate urgency. This cloth, designed to be airtight, would be the primary component of their seal. The construction was a feat of improvisation. Across this frame, they stretched the heavy brattice cloth, pulling it as taut as they could. They used mud from the mine floor, fine coal dust, mixing it into a thick paste to plaster the edges of the cloth, filling every crack and seam they could find. They built 2 such walls. As they worked, they would have been acutely aware of the time. Some of their self-rescuers would have already expired, forcing them to share, a dangerous practice known as skip breathing. Finally, the barricade was complete. The last flap of cloth was sealed, plunging the 13 men into a different kind of darkness. Inside the sealed chamber, a new and terrible phase began: the waiting, a profound and heavy silence, conserving their energy, conserving their cap lamp batteries, conserving the precious air in their enclosure. As they breathed, they consumed oxygen and exhaled carbon dioxide. Without ventilation, CO2 would gradually rise. They were in a race against their own biology. They would have talked to each other, voices low. Moments of connection were a vital defense against despair. As the hours inside the barricade stretched on, the miners knew their time was running out. In these final, lucid moments, their thoughts turned to their families. These were not letters of despair, but of love, a last testament from deep within the earth. Randal McCloy Jr., the youngest of the crew, was designated to write a collective note on behalf of the group. The note captured the final thoughts of the trapped men. The note read, in part, "Tell all I'll see them on the other side." It wasn't our fault. We had no bad air. The final line was a simple, heartbreaking declaration. We love you. This act of writing was a profound expression of their humanity in the face of death. They wanted their families to know they were together, that they were not alone, and that their final thoughts were of them. Below, 13 men wait behind brattice cloth. Above, a silence snaps, power fails, gauges fall dark. The alarms tell a story the men cannot. Something violent has severed the mine's lifelines. Within minutes, state and federal teams are alerted. Training turns into motion. Mine rescue crews mobilize across the region. Volunteers stand ready to risk their lives. Families converge on Sago Baptist Church, hope in their hands, fear on their faces. The town becomes a waiting room. As the sun lifts, the portal turns into a staging ground for a complex, dangerous operation. Coordination is everything. State, federal, and company teams pool skills and gear to meet the threat. The rescuers are the tip of the spear, rotating in shifts with backup teams always ready. A remote rover goes first, the electronic canary sent to see what people cannot. Its mission is simple and vital. Eyes on the shattered entries, a path for the men behind it. The feed confirms the invisible enemy, lethal carbon monoxide, dangerous methane. Atmosphere now rules the clock. Cables snare the robot. From here on, only people can carry the search forward. Human teams advance, agonizingly slow, measuring each foot against gas and fire. They clear rock, shore the roof, rebuild stoppings, and push fresh air deeper, inch by inch toward second left. Invisible gases dictate every move. If methane spikes, they retreat and wait for air to turn. On the surface, hours feel like years. Frustration and dread settle in with the cold. A second front opens on the surface, drilled to intersect the tunnel where the men may be sealed. Crews aim a narrow borehole nearly half a mile down. Precision is everything. A drift of only a few feet could miss the void entirely, and the men waiting behind cloth. Breakthrough. The camera sees debris and hears only silence. The men are elsewhere. Hope bends, but does not break. While a town prays, teams reset and go back under, toward second left, toward the cloth wall. What waits beyond it will lift a nation, or break it. The breach is next. After more than 40 hours of relentless back-breaking work, the rescue teams underground were finally nearing their objective. At approximately 11:45 p.m., on the night of January 3rd, a rescue team finally breached the area. They saw the makeshift barricade the miners had constructed from Brattis cloth. The rescuers began to carefully cut their way through the seal, their hearts pounding. Behind that fragile wall lay the answer to the question the whole world was asking. Were they alive? As the rescuers entered the sealed chamber, their lights swept across a scene of stillness. They found the 13 miners lying motionless. The air inside the barricade was thick with carbon monoxide. But then, they found one. One of the men, Randal McCloy Jr., showed faint signs of life. He was breathing. He was alive. As rescue teams reached the barricaded miners deep underground, a fatal miscommunication occurred. The initial report suggested the miraculous, that 12 of the 13 miners had been found alive. He announced that 12 men were alive. The church erupted in a wave of pure, unadulterated joy. Church bells began to ring across the small West Virginia community. National media broadcast the news instantly. For a brief moment, the nation celebrated a miracle. But deep inside the mine, the reality was starkly different. The communication breakdown created a surreal disconnect between the grim scene underground and the jubilant surface celebration. Then, at approximately 3 a.m., CEO Ben Hatfield arrived at the church. He had the terrible task of correcting the record. He stood before the families and told them the truth. There was only one survivor. 12 men were dead. Joy turned to screams of anguish and disbelief. The corrected news fell like a physical blow upon the small community of Sago. The town, and indeed the entire state of West Virginia, was united in grief. In the wake of the funerals and the raw public grieving, the hard questions began. The U.S. Mine Safety and Health Administration and the West Virginia Office of Miners' Health, Safety and Training launched a full-scale investigation into the causes of the disaster. Investigators descended upon the Sago Mine, and the grim task of re-entering the damaged sections to search for physical evidence. The Sago Mine had a history of safety violations, including citations for inadequate ventilation and the accumulation of dangerous gases. Public hearings were held where officials from International Coal Group were called to testify. The families of the lost miners and the public demanded answers. The final MSHA report concluded that the explosion was caused by a massive methane leak from a recently sealed-off area, and that a lightning strike on the surface was the likely culprit. The disaster was not simply a tragic accident, but the result of a cascade of failures. International Coal Group, the operator of the mine, came under intense public scrutiny and faced significant consequences. The company was hit with substantial fines for the safety violations that contributed to the disaster. The Sago tragedy exposed weaknesses, not just within a single company, but within the broader system designed to protect the nation's miners. The Sago Mine Disaster left deep and lasting scars. To honor the men who died, permanent memorials were erected. Near the site of the mine, a black granite monument was built, engraved with the names of the 12 miners who perished. Each year, on the anniversary of the explosion, the community gathers for a candlelight vigil to remember the men. The handwritten notes left by the miners provided a poignant, human face to the tragedy. In response to the public outcry, the United States Congress moved with uncharacteristic speed. It was called the Mine Improvement and New Emergency Response Act, or the Miner Act, a legacy written in law. The law also required mining companies to install or upgrade refuge chambers. It mandated that all mines develop and maintain caches of emergency breathing devices. The Miner Act required companies to install wireless communication and electronic tracking systems. It mandated that every underground mine have at least 2 certified rescue teams available within 1 hour's travel time. The legislative changes spurred by the Miner Act were translated into a new generation of safety technology and procedures on the ground. Miners also carry personal emergency devices, or PEDs, which can receive text messages from the surface. It pierces the isolation that the Sago miners endured. The echo of that January explosion is now part of the American industrial landscape, a low, constant hum that whispers one message: never forget. The 13 men who went into the mine on January 2, 2006 could not have known the legacy they'd leave. Subscribe for more true exploration and disaster stories.